Book of David, a Manifesto for the Revolution in Mental Health Care. By Michael Benjamin, M.D. Forward Mentors. What is psychoanalysis? Imagine you have a large, expensive, but misbehaving, Swiss watch. The attendant watchmaker sits in his shaded room, only a bell-shaped lamp illuminates his workbench. On it is a black clean cloth and his tools pedantically arrayed. Through his owlish eyes magnified by his sparkling glasses, he studies the watch. He quickly and methodically begins to take your heirloom apart. Meticulously paraded in front of him is each screw and cogwheel. He picks them up gently one by one, examines them and then uses a small pump and tiny dropper to oil and dry each piece. Studiously, he places each piece back. He opens the watch and yes, the resuscitated Lazarus-like second hand is beating. With a smile, he opens his watch and compares. Yes, they are in complete synchronism. His mouth only expresses a smile of satisfaction verging on smugness. Then his face turns to horror. On the desk is one errant and defiant small cog. What the hell is that? He croaks. And you reply, dunno, maybe it came from yours. As told by Leslie Foxy Carpel. Dedication and first thoughts. David Schumann was a Leeds lad. Having arrived in Israel, David decided he was going to be a psychiatrist. David and I were both incurable Leeds United supporters. We met by chance in a committee meeting. I never got to mentor David. This book contains the wisdom I would have shared with him. I still support Leeds United with blind faith and often characteristic despair. I believe David is still marching on together with us all from a different place. David, this is your book. I am writing exactly what I would have told you and someone else, mucker. We're two Yorkshire lads, we don't call a spade a spade. It's a bloody shovel. That's it, lad, plain talking, even though it might not be pleasant to hear. My mum, a Polish princess, but also a Yorkshire lass, always said, friends tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So, David, psychiatry like Leeds United is pretty effed up. But we did say plain talking. Before diving in, let me tell you what I expect and what you can expect. I expect you to go through a few stages. The first stage is understanding. Do not be concerned if at the end of any chapter, you say, I understand that. 2 minutes later the information recedes into a fog. Don't worry, I will repeat the previous information in each chapter and add a bit more. With repetition, you will pass from understanding the information to knowing it. Again, I will repeat this message and explain what I mean. At one point, you understood that 2 plus 2 is 4. Then you know 2 and 2 is 4. Which brings me to one of my favorite clean jokes. The world is divided into 3, those who can count and those who cannot. As a corollary, it could be said, the world is divided into 3, those who find the joke amusing and those who do not. You are at the stage of understanding. Let me ease the process with another joke. Sherlock Holmes asks Watson what he understands when he looks up at the dark night sky. Watson replies, the myriad of stars make me realize how inconsequential we are in the overreaching plan of the Creator. No, Watson, it means someone has stolen our tent. In psychiatry, I suspect someone has stolen the tent. Building a new explanation. The bottom line of what I have to say is quite simple. Life is more than avoiding nightmares, it is about living the daydream. But, by the time you and I have worked that through together, we are going to build a new explanation. It may prove to be complete bollocks, but it will be food for thought. Ever since I started in psychiatry some 50 years ago, I have been fascinated by 3 aspects: dreams, daydreams and belief. Dreams and daydreams are both neglected subjects, and we never have really tried to integrate and explain elements which probably fill half of our lives. No one really seems to know what the dreams and daydreams are doing. As for belief, so often it's our belief that we can control psychotic thoughts against the patient's psychosis that leads him to believe his thoughts are being controlled. Which belief is right? Why must they clash? But they do, and as with all crusading believers, we are arrogant. We cause damage and claim it for the good. Subjective reality. I will not attempt to define reality, other than to say that reality is very subjective. Reality is what you make of it, often it is a belief. Our professional reality as therapists and doctors has as little foundation as our patients' delusions, rigidly held and circuitous. Our profession is a series of beliefs. We healers have had some very bizarre chameleon-like beliefs. We believe until we discard. Suffice to say that if you were to practice psychiatry today as practiced in the previous century, you'd go to prison for a long time. I can imagine your jaw dropping. It is no longer accepted practice to lobotomize or give electric convulsive therapy, ECT, to homosexuals. In the 60s it was, nor is it a good idea to put schizophrenics into insulin-induced comas. For a few decades it was acceptable. God alone knows what the next generation will say about ours. Would chemical straitjackets and Ritalin appear in our list of horrors? I think that they would. The other thing we have in common with our patients and their delusions is we too are firmly attached to our perceived therapeutic reality. We treat according to our belief system. Like all true believers, we are prepared to fight any non-believers, including our patients, and claiming it is for their good. We often behave with zeal comparable to the hyper-energized missionaries of yore in deepest Africa. Having shocked you once, let me do it again. There is one vital difference between our belief system and that of our patents. The patients do not have a vested interest in their delusional belief system. We professionals most certainly do. With absolutely no compunction or regret, I firmly claim psychiatry sold its soul to the pharmaceutical companies. The research used to justify medications is becoming regularly challenged. At best, the funding of research is suspect. We have become medication-orientated in search of the golden bullet. We haven't found the bullet, but we do know where the gold is. There is far more to psychiatry than looking for molecular receptors and, in doing so, finding different ways to poison our patients. We then forgive ourselves because our intentions are pure. Meanwhile we zonk patients back into the Stone Age with chemical straitjackets. And the most awful side effects. There is more to mankind than receptors in his brain. To do research on receptors and extrapolate is as significant and obsessively ritualistic as earth, wind, fire and water once was. The research is about as useful as burning down a library and assaying the carbon content. I pinched that idea from Kurt Vonnegut Jr. I would not say my stances are anti-psychiatry, but they are hypercritical, and I am far from convinced that what we are doing is right. Throughout modern history, previous generations of psychiatrists have perpetrated a very sordid series of misdeeds which we cannot explain away. Our helping hand to the Nazis and Soviets cannot and should never be forgotten or brushed aside. I fear we have provided the next generation with another batch of reasons to question themselves with. Now for an important fact, another cornerstone of my thinking. Half of the time, we humans are not aware of what we are doing. I'm going to surprise you even further. When we believe we know what we are doing, we are not actually fully aware of what we are doing. Now, that is one hell of a complicated sentence. To put it simply, I will be referring to the automatic everything. I contend that even when we are fully aware of what we are doing, in actual fact, we are not fully aware. On effort, we can become aware, but most of the time we do not make that effort. We have 3 automatic pilots working in tandem in the automatic everything. They automatically control the way we feel, the way we think and the way we act. The belief system is firmly hidden and well disguised in the automatic everything. We are not overtly aware of the 3 components of automatic everything: automatic thinking, automatic feeling and automatic behavior, our doing. There is a good reason why this is so. Our evolution has benefited no end. In this book, I will explain how the automatic everything came about and why it is so beneficial. But, automatic everything can and often does go wrong. When it does, it is hard to detect. Of course, the way we feel, the way we think and the way we act are, in part, a reaction to what is going on around us and a product of what we have experienced in the past. To make things more complicated, the way we feel, think and act are all mutually linked and influence each other. After 50 years in psychiatry, I firmly believe the present is a flimsy interface separating our past experiences and future expectations and are interpreted on the backdrop of acquired beliefs and expectations. Dreams are integral in the integration of our past. Daydreams can be either a safety valve or the beginnings of hopes and plans. I will explain to you, as I would have explained to David, how I think this develops, how it works and how it can go wrong. Let me tell you a joke about daydreams. A lady imagines she is being chased through a green pasture by an Adonis. With every step, a piece of her attire disappears. Distraught she is, but a step away and naked, she trips. She looks up at him. "What are you to do with me?" "Lady, it's your daydream. You tell me." "I wonder, can you say why this is a daydream and not a dream?" Therapy is a geography lesson, not a history lesson. In the final parts of the book, I will set up tentative treatment plans and how I think treatment services should work, yet do not. I will place a great emphasis on the importance of prevention. Prevention is not a sexy flavor of the month subject, but it works. I will suggest that much can be done online. One of my basic suppositions is that you can show people how to change by themselves. I know that is a big statement, but I really believe I can back it up. Therapy is not a history lesson of why the problem is there. It is a geography lesson showing you how to avoid the problem. I think people can make their own maps and guide themselves, once they know how. Treatment is a learning and correctional experience. So why not adapt all the teaching skills out there on the web? I built the website www.myselfhealth.org/bod to show it can be done. Look at the site, but it is only a demo site, as you will see. Finally, in the age of third-party payment, insured medicine, I will delve into service models and treatment. I have learned 3 more important facts. I believe they are essential in order to understand the picture, as I see it. After 50 years in the profession, and as a graduate of the 1960s New Left, I realize I am getting old. I cling to ideas I know have failed, not only in psychiatry. These ideals shape today's psychiatry. I would tell David not to be encumbered by others' baggage, but remember at the end of it all, you'll have your baggage too. Take anything you need, anything you want from my generation, but not as a belief system. Think out of the box. I know some people who think out of the box by smashing it to smithereens. When we discuss therapy in Chapter 18, I will mention the importance of being able to interact with a challenge to your own beliefs or those of your patients. The goal is acceptance, not to be overwhelmed or overwhelming. You can share and imbibe a belief system. In the case of therapy, it can only exist if both you and your patient believe. But blind belief can be so very dangerous. Good, evil in belief. I would tell David that there are 2 other facts. We must accept that both good and evil exist, and there is a reason that we believe in religion. Both are important in understanding psychiatric practice as I see it. It is vital that we realize these 2 aspects. The acceptance of something more significant than the individual is an essential part of therapy. Most of the time we are trying to sort out how we can exist as part of and yet be separate from everything that is around us. We develop belief systems. We need belief systems. They are an essential part of our automatic everything. As is the sense of good and bad, evil exists. I know that will raise a lot of hackles. I did not arrive at this conclusion from a religious point of view. I distrust all the religious in every religion. Again, I will explain why I distrust them all. I do believe that good and bad exists, and the end point of good therapy is to realize it and be able to discern, then do what is good. As a corollary of accepting good and evil, we can eventually recognize that we cannot cure everything, but we can try to treat everything. To be even more provocative, I maintain that which we cannot prevent, we will not cure. We can only treat and never cure that which we did not prevent. We must accept our limitations. We are only human. In writing this book, I have taken knowledge and information from a lot of sources. Apart from a few, I am neither going to quote them nor attribute them. The reason for doing so is not a lack of recognition, but the feeling that I probably am not quoting them accurately. I am using them as I understand them and as they have become integrated into what I think. Secondly, speaking for myself, I find a lot of references and quotes to be quite dull. When I'm bored, I start daydreaming, and that seems to be a perfect place to start our journey together. Oronet, Israel, January 13, 2018. Sarit story. My mother was to be disappointed yet again. My grandmother's name was Sarah, and everyone expected that I would call my firstborn after her. I didn't, but I did choose Sarit as her second name. Here's the reason why. My first case in psychiatry was a young lady called Sarit. She was, as I was to learn to recognize, a typical schizophrenic. Her cheeks were harrowed and acne scarred, her complexion was invariably pallid and waxy. Sarit was always in a state of alarm and discontent. Her eyes were restless as she looked for something that only she knew what. She couldn't explain, and to her, it didn't seem to be important to explain. The only thing that she knew was that her father had raped her. There were no signs and it was obvious that he hadn't, but nevertheless, Sarit lived in a mixture of fear and guilt that split asunder her very being. I spent hours with Sarit. We would sit opposite each other alone in the room with pieces of plasticine on my desk. I don't know why, but we were trying to make a family tree. We put her grandparents as the trunk. As I remember, she was particularly attached to her grandmother. Her parents were the two main branches, and to the branches were attached Sarit and her two sisters. Above everything was a sky of blue. We could never manage to get all the parts in order. We spent hours, I reckoned. Even then, Sarit and her reality was fractured. All I had to do was to symbolically put it back together. Neither of us could. I started doing night duty, which entailed sleeping at the hospital and being available for emergencies. I remember thinking a lot about Sarit and wondering just what was happening. I particularly remember looking at the bedside table lamp and wondering how it was that the shade was illuminated and illuminating the room, yet the source of illumination was not visible. The bulb? I wondered if Sarit was like this and if we were all like this. What we see from outside is really represented or powered from something within. Sarit didn't get better. Only 2/3 of the schizophrenics make any kind of recovery, and Sarit was in the third who were not to make any recovery. She was completely insane. As time went by, she seemed to realize that her fate was to be that of the mentally ill patient. She repeatedly complained to me that she can't be like her friends, they were all in the army, and I will not be. I remember thinking at the time that nothing would ever be right for Sarit. There was no life waiting for her. After a long time, Sarit developed a terrible shaking, which years later we were to discover was not part of the illness but very much part of the cure. It turns out that, not only were we not able to cure her, we had unwittingly managed to make her situation much worse. Not that that makes much difference. Sarit, now discharged, would come visit me at home, and by behavioral means, we would try to stop her shaking. Then the awful Yom Kippur War broke out. I was serving in the army, and I don't know why or what she did. I heard a knocking on my door one evening and I opened it to see Sarit. They're killing all the boys and girls and they say it's me that is mad. She looked at me straight in the eyes, turned around and went into the gloom. I turned around and cried. I wondered what kind of lunatic world we were all living in, where Sarit was the only one who saw the truth. We had betrayed her just as we had betrayed the soldiers we sent to die without finding another solution. The memory of Sarit always stayed with me. I decided that her name should go on for another generation, at least, because I was certain she would never have children. I don't know if she did or she didn't, but I was blessed later in my career to see girls and boys like Sarit, with guidance and shelter, can live fairly normal lives and be blessed with beautiful children. So,